My name is Jessica. I'm 29 years old, and until last Christmas, I was the invisible daughter who had been bankrolling my family's lifestyle for 7 years, while my younger sister Emma got all the credit. That Christmas morning, after my mother chose Emma's side in the cruelest way possible, I walked out and systematically dismantled every financial support system I had quietly built for them. What happened next exposed years of lies and left my family scrambling to pick up the pieces of their carefully constructed facade. Before I tell you how my entire family ended up begging me to come back after discovering the truth about who had really been supporting them all these years, let me know in the comments if you've ever been the scapegoat in a golden child dynamic. And don't forget to upvote if this story resonates with your own family experiences. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, with my parents, Patricia and Robert, and my younger sister Emma, who's now 25. From as early as I can remember, Emma could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. When she brought home a C+ on her report card, it was celebrated with ice cream, because math is hard for creative minds like Emma's. When I brought home straight A's, I got a brief, "Good job," before the conversation immediately shifted back to Emma's latest art project or drama club performance. This pattern defined our entire childhood. Emma got the bigger bedroom with the bay window because she needed natural light for her artistic expression. I got the smaller room facing the alley because I was more practical and wouldn't mind. Emma's birthday parties were elaborate affairs with themes and decorations, while mine were simple family dinners because I was more mature and didn't need all the fuss. The golden child dynamic became even more pronounced during our teenage years. Emma was allowed to quit her part-time job at the local bookstore after 2 weeks because it was interfering with her creative development. Meanwhile, I worked every summer and weekend throughout high school to save for college, with my parents praising my work ethic, while simultaneously expecting me to help pay for Emma's art supplies and private music lessons. When it came time for college, the favoritism reached new heights. Emma was accepted to a prestigious art school in San Francisco with a partial scholarship, but the remaining tuition was still $35,000 per year. Without hesitation, our parents took out a second mortgage on our house to cover her expenses, calling it an investment in Emma's bright future. They threw her a going-away party with 50 guests and hired a photographer to capture the moment. 2 years later, when I was accepted to Oregon State University for computer science, I was told the family had already stretched their finances for Emma's education. I would need to figure out my own funding through loans and scholarships. "You're so responsible, Jessica," Mom said when delivering this news. "We know you'll find a way to make it work. You always do." So I did make it work. I took out $60,000 in student loans, worked in the campus IT department 20 hours a week, and spent my summers doing internships that barely covered my living expenses. Meanwhile, Emma's Instagram was filled with pictures of her studying abroad in Italy, taking weekend trips to Paris, and attending art exhibitions in New York, all funded by our parents' continuous support. I graduated summa cum laude and landed a software engineering position at a growing tech startup in Portland. By 26, I was earning $95,000 a year and had been promoted to senior developer. Finally, I could breathe financially and start paying down my student loans aggressively. That's when the phone calls started. "Jessica, honey," Mom's voice was strained during one call in early 2018. "Your father's company is downsizing again. He might be facing another pay cut, and with Emma's final year tuition coming up, we're feeling a bit stretched." Dad had worked for the same manufacturing company for 25 years, but the industry had been declining for the past decade. His salary had been reduced twice already, and they were struggling to maintain their lifestyle while still funding Emma's expensive education. "Is there anything I can do to help?" I asked, though I was still aggressively paying down my own student loans. "Well," Mom hesitated, "we were wondering if you might be able to help with just a few small things. Maybe the utilities or groceries occasionally, just until your father's situation stabilizes." What started as occasional help with a $200 electric bill quickly escalated. Within 6 months, I was contributing $1,500 per month to keep my family afloat. I paid their mortgage, $900, utilities, $350, and car payment for Mom's SUV, $250. When Emma needed money for her senior art exhibition, I covered the $2,000 cost. When their washing machine broke, I bought them a new one. When they couldn't afford their annual vacation to the coast, I secretly paid for their hotel and activities. Through all of this, Emma remained blissfully unaware of our family's financial struggles. She continued posting pictures of her lavish student lifestyle, including expensive dinners and shopping trips that I later learned were funded by money our parents diverted from the support I was providing. After Emma's graduation, I assumed my financial contributions would decrease. Instead, they increased. "Emma is starting her career as a freelance artist," Mom explained during a family dinner at their house. "It takes time to build a client base in the creative field. She's so talented, but the art world can be challenging for young women. Emma had moved back home and converted our old playroom into an art studio. She spent her days painting and applying to galleries, while I continued paying the bills that kept the lights on in her studio and food on the table she ate at. I'm so proud of Emma for pursuing her passion, Dad would tell his friends at barbecues. Not everyone has the courage to follow their artistic dreams. She's going to be famous someday, mark my words. Meanwhile, my achievements at work went largely unnoticed by my family. When I was promoted to lead developer and received a significant raise, Mom's response was, "That's nice, That's nice, dear. Emma just got her first paid commission. $500 for a portrait. We're so excited." My best friend Rachel, who had watched this dynamic play out for years, was less diplomatic. "Jessica, they're using you," she said during one of our weekly coffee dates. "Emma is 23 years old and hasn't had a real job since high school. Your parents are enabling her while you sacrifice your own financial goals to support all of them." "She's an artist," I defended weakly. "Creative careers take time to develop." "Bull," Rachel replied bluntly. "Plenty of artists work day jobs while building their careers. My cousin is a successful painter, and he worked as a barista for 5 years before his art became profitable. Emma isn't building a career. She's playing pretend while you fund her lifestyle." Deep down, I knew Rachel was right, but admitting it meant confronting some painful truths about my family's priorities. It was easier to keep paying and hope that someday my contributions would be acknowledged and appreciated. The acknowledgement never came. For 3 years, I watched Emma float through life without financial responsibility, while I worked 60-hour weeks and lived in a modest apartment to maintain my family's standard of living. My parents bragged about Emma's art shows and creative projects, while my role as the family's financial backbone remained invisible. The breaking point came last December, during what would become the most devastating Christmas of my life. Emma had been dating Marcus, a fellow artist she met at a gallery opening for about 8 months. He seemed nice enough, though I noticed he also appeared to have no steady income and lived with his parents despite being 26 years old. Emma brought him to family gatherings, and our parents welcomed him warmly, often praising his artistic vision and creative soul. 2 weeks before Christmas, Emma called me with exciting news. "Jessica, you'll never guess! Marcus proposed! We're engaged!" Her voice was bubbling with excitement. I was genuinely happy for her, despite my complicated feelings about their financial situation. "Congratulations, Emma! When did this happen?" "Last night at the waterfront. He rented out a section of the art museum for a private proposal. It was so romantic. He had musicians playing and everything. The proposal sounded expensive, but I pushed aside my practical concerns." "That sounds beautiful. Have you told Mom and Dad?" "Yes. They're over the moon. We're thinking of having the wedding next fall. Mom is already talking about venues and flowers and all the planning we need to do." That evening, I received a call from Mom. "Jessica, isn't it wonderful about Emma and Marcus? We're so thrilled." Mom's excitement was palpable. "They're thinking of having the wedding at the Columbia River Gorge. You know how Emma has always loved it there." "That sounds lovely," I replied, though I was already mentally calculating the potential costs. "We've been looking at venues, and we found the perfect spot. It's about $15,000 for the venue, but it includes catering for 150 guests. Emma has her heart set on it." My stomach dropped. $15,000. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's Emma's special day. We want to give her the wedding of her dreams. Your father and I have been discussing it, and we think we can make it work if we all contribute as a family. There it was. The expectation that I would help fund Emma's wedding, just as I had been funding everything else. "Mom, I'm already contributing $1,500 per month to help with your regular expenses. I'm not sure I can take on additional wedding costs right now." "Oh, sweetheart, we're not asking for much more. Maybe just a few thousand to help with the dress and flowers." Emma specifically mentioned wanting you to be part of making her day special. Over the following days, the wedding expectations snowballed. Emma wanted a $3,000 designer dress, professional photography costing $4,000, and flowers that would run another $2,500. Each item was presented as essential to Emma's happiness, and each came with subtle pressure for me to contribute. Emma has been through so much trying to establish her art career, Mom said during one particularly manipulative phone call. This wedding is her chance to feel celebrated and supported by her family. You know how important family is to her. The irony was suffocating. Emma felt supported by her family because I had been supporting her family for years, funding the very lifestyle that allowed her to pursue art without worry, while our parents maintained their middle-class appearance. Christmas Eve arrived with a family dinner at my parents' house. Emma and Marcus were there, along with our grandparents and a few family friends. The conversation inevitably turned to wedding plans, with Emma excitedly describing her vision for the perfect day. "Jessica is going to help us make it all happen," Emma announced to the table, smiling at me warmly. She's always been so generous with the family. I felt everyone's eyes on me, expectant and approving. Here was my moment to be the supportive older sister, to publicly commit to funding Emma's dream wedding, just as I had been quietly funding everything else. Instead, I felt something shift inside me. Maybe it was Rachel's words echoing in my head, or maybe it was the realization that Emma had just volunteered my money in front of a room full of people without even asking me first. Actually, Emma, I haven't committed to helping with the wedding costs, I said carefully. I'm already contributing significantly to Mom and Dad's monthly expenses, and I need to be mindful of my own financial goals. The table went quiet. Emma's smile faltered, and I could see confusion and hurt in her eyes. But you always help with family things, she said, her voice smaller now. I just assumed. I help because I choose to, not because I'm obligated to fund every family event, I replied, my voice steady despite the tension I felt building around the table. Mom jumped in quickly. Of course, dear. No one expects you to pay for everything. We're just grateful for whatever support you can offer as Emma's sister. But the damage was done. The assumption had been exposed, and the rest of the evening was awkward and strained. Emma barely spoke to me, and I could see our parents exchanging concerned looks whenever they thought I wasn't watching. Christmas morning brought the confrontation I had been dreading. I arrived at my parents' house at 10 a.m. as planned, carrying presents I had carefully selected and wrapped. The living room was decorated with Emma's handmade ornaments and twinkling lights, a picture-perfect Christmas scene that I had helped make possible through my financial contributions. Emma was already there with Marcus, opening presents under the tree. I watched as she unwrapped gift after gift, expensive art supplies from Dad, a designer handbag from Mom, jewelry from our grandparents. When she opened Marcus's gift, a professional easel that probably cost $800, she squealed with delight and kissed him dramatically. My gifts, by comparison, were practical. A nice sweater for Mom, a book for Dad, and a set of quality paintbrushes for Emma. They were thoughtful, but not extravagant, reflecting my need to be more careful with money given my increased family contributions. After the present opening, Mom made breakfast while Emma and Marcus cuddled on the couch, discussing their wedding plans in excited whispers. I helped in the kitchen, falling back into my familiar role as the reliable daughter who took care of practical things while Emma basked in attention. Jessica, Mom said quietly as we prepared the meal, I wanted to talk to you about last night. Emma was really hurt by what you said about the wedding. I didn't say I wouldn't help, I replied, cracking eggs into a bowl. I just said I couldn't commit to funding everything she wants. But you have to understand, this is Emma's one wedding day. She's been dreaming about it since she was little, and after everything she's been through, trying to establish herself as an artist. What exactly has Emma been through? I asked, my frustration finally bubbling over. She's 25 years old and hasn't worked a regular job since high school. She lives at home rent-free, has her own art studio, and doesn't pay for groceries, utilities, or any other living expenses. What exactly has been so difficult? Mom looked taken aback by my sharp tone. Jessica, that's not fair. Emma is pursuing her passion. Not everyone can work a corporate job like you do. She's sensitive and creative, and she needs different kinds of support. What kind of support do I need? I asked, setting down my whisk. I paid my own way through college. I work 60 hours a week. I live in a tiny apartment so I can afford to help this family, and I haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. When do I get to be sensitive and creative? When do I get to be supported? Before Mom could answer, Emma appeared in the doorway. What's going on? I can hear you from the living room, she said, looking between us with concern. Nothing, sweetheart, Mom said quickly. Just discussing meal planning. But I was done pretending. 7 years of financial sacrifice, of being taken for granted while Emma received all the praise and support, finally reached its breaking point. Actually, Emma, we were discussing your wedding and how you expect me to pay for it, I said, my voice calm but firm. Emma's face flushed. I never said you had to pay for everything. I just thought. You always help with family things. I thought you wanted to be part of making my day special. I've been making every day special for this family for 7 years, I replied. I pay the mortgage on this house, the utilities that power your art studio, the car payment on Mom's SUV, and the groceries that stock this kitchen. I funded your senior art exhibition, your supplies, and even your dates with Marcus when you needed emergency money. Emma stared at me in shock. What are you talking about? Mom and Dad pay for those things. I turned to Mom, who had gone pale. Want to tell her, or should I? Jessica, please, Mom whispered. Don't do this on Christmas. Do what? Tell the truth? Emma, where do you think the money comes from? Dad's salary was cut twice, and he barely makes enough to cover food and basic expenses. I've been paying $1,500 per month for years to keep this family afloat while you play artist and Mom and Dad take credit for supporting your dreams. Emma looked at Mom with confusion and growing horror. Is that true? Mom's silence was answer enough. Emma, I continued, Every time you needed money for supplies, for exhibition fees, for those weekend trips to Seattle galleries, where do you think that money came from? I've been working overtime and living like a college student so you can pursue your passion without worry. I didn't know, Emma whispered, tears starting to form. I thought Mom and Dad have been taking my money and giving it to you while letting you believe they were the ones sacrificing for your career. Meanwhile, I'm 29 years old with no savings, no house, and no life outside of work because every spare dollar goes to supporting this family's lifestyle. Marcus had appeared in the doorway, drawn by the raised voices. He looked uncomfortable and confused, clearly not understanding the family dynamics he was witnessing. Jessica, Mom said, her voice shaking, you make it sound like we forced you to help. You offered. You wanted to be part of the family. I offered to help during a temporary crisis, I shot back. I didn't offer to become the family ATM while Emma gets praised for her artistic pursuits that I'm actually funding. Emma was crying now, her perfect Christmas morning shattered by the revelation that her supported lifestyle was built on her sister's sacrifice. I never asked for any of this, she sobbed. If I had known Jessica was paying for everything, I never would have accepted it. But you didn't ask where the money was coming from either, I replied, my anger giving way to exhaustion. For 7 years, you've lived in this house, eaten this food, used these utilities, and pursued your art without ever questioning how it was all possible on Dad's reduced salary. Dad, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. Jessica, you're being unfair to Emma. She didn't know about our financial arrangement, and it's not her fault that we accepted your help. Financial arrangement? I repeated incredulously. Is that what we're calling it? Dad, I've given this family over $120,000 in the past 7 years. That's not an arrangement. That's me single-handedly preventing you from losing your house while Emma gets to play starving artist without actually starving. The room fell completely silent, except for Emma's quiet crying. And now, I continued, you want me to add wedding costs to my monthly contributions so Emma can have her dream day while I continue living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old car. Jessica? Marcus said quietly, speaking for the first time. If I had known about this situation, I would never have proposed such an expensive celebration. Emma and I can have a simple wedding. I looked at him with a mixture of surprise and gratitude. At least someone in this room was capable of recognizing the reality of the situation. The wedding isn't the real problem, Marcus, I said. The problem is that my family has built their entire lifestyle around my financial support while pretending it doesn't exist. Emma gets to be the supported dreamer. Mom and Dad get to be the proud parents funding their daughter's artistic career. And I get to be invisible. Emma looked up at me through her tears. Jessica, I'm so sorry. I really didn't know. If you want me to get a regular job and start contributing to the family expenses, I will. For a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this conversation would finally lead to some balance, some acknowledgement of the sacrifices I had been making. But then Mom intervened. Emma, sweetheart, you don't need to get a regular job. Your art is important, and you're on the verge of a breakthrough. Jessica, she turned to me. I know you're upset, but Emma's career is at a crucial stage. She has 3 gallery shows lined up for next year, and this could be her big opportunity. And there it was, the same pattern that had defined our family for decades. Emma's needs and dreams took priority, while my contributions were expected but unacknowledged. You know what, Mom? I said, grabbing my purse from the counter. You're right. Emma's art career is at a crucial stage, so let's see how crucial it really is when it has to be funded by Emma's income instead of mine. What do you mean? Dad asked, alarm creeping into his voice. I mean, I'm done. Done paying your mortgage, your utilities, your car payment, and your grocery bills. Done funding Emma's art supplies and exhibition fees. Done sacrificing my own financial security so this family can maintain the illusion that everything is fine. Jessica, you can't just stop helping, Mom said, panic replacing her earlier defensive tone. We depend on your contributions. The mortgage payment is due next week. Then you better figure out how to make that payment without me, I replied, heading toward the door. Emma stood up suddenly. Jessica, wait. Please don't do this because you're angry with me. I'll get a job. I'll start paying rent. I'll do whatever you want. I turned back to look at my younger sister, her face streaked with tears, and her perfect Christmas morning ruined by the truth about our family's finances. Emma, this isn't about punishment. This is about reality. You're 25 years old, and you've never had to worry about money because I've been taking care of everything behind the scenes. Marcus, I looked at her fiancé. Do you have any idea how much money it takes to support 2 unemployed adults and fund an art career? Marcus shook his head, looking increasingly uncomfortable. About $30,000 per year, I continued. That's what I've been contributing annually for the past 7 years. Emma, if you want to marry Marcus and build a life together, you both need to understand what financial independence actually looks like. But you can't just abandon the family, Dad said, his voice rising. We raised you. We supported you through college. You supported Emma through college, I corrected. I took out $60,000 in student loans that I'm still paying off. And now I've supported you through 7 years of financial struggles while Emma got to play artist and you got to play proud parents. I opened the front door, letting in the cold December air. Jessica, Mom called after me, if you walk out that door, don't expect us to welcome you back when you change your mind. I paused in the doorway, considering her words. Mom, I've been trying to earn a place in this family for 29 years. I've been trying to buy your love and appreciation with money for the past 7. I'm finally ready to stop trying. I walked out into the crisp morning air, leaving behind the Christmas breakfast I had helped fund, the presents I had helped make possible, and the family whose lifestyle I had been supporting for years. As I drove home to my small apartment, my phone started ringing immediately. First Mom, then Dad, then Emma. I let them all go to voicemail, needing time to process what had just happened and decide what came next. That afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and began systematically reviewing my financial commitments to my family. The list was longer and more expensive than I had realized. Monthly mortgage payment, $900. Utilities, electric, gas, water, trash, $350. Mom's car payment, $250. Car insurance for both parents, $180. Home internet and streaming services, $95. Cell phone family plan, $140. Average monthly emergency expenses, $200. Emma's art supplies and exhibition costs, $150 per month average. Total monthly contribution, $2,065. Annual total, $27,180. Over 7 years, I had contributed nearly $200,000 to my family's lifestyle, money that could have bought me a house, funded my own dreams, or simply allowed me to live comfortably instead of paycheck to paycheck despite my good salary. The reality was stark and undeniable. I had been single-handedly funding my family's middle-class lifestyle while living like a recent college graduate myself. I spent the evening creating a detailed spreadsheet of every payment, every contribution, every time I had sacrificed my own financial security for my family's comfort. As I worked, my phone continued buzzing with calls and messages that I ignored. Finally, around 9 p.m., I was ready to listen to the voicemails. The first was from Mom, left at 2 p.m. Jessica, I hope you're calming down and realizing how hurtful your words were today. Emma is devastated, and your father is very upset. We need to talk about this like adults and figure out how to move forward as a family. The second was from Emma, her voice thick with tears. Jessica, I'm so sorry I didn't know about the money. I feel terrible that you've been struggling while I didn't even think about where everything was coming from. Please call me back. We need to fix this. The third was from Dad. Jessica, I don't know what's gotten into you lately, but this behavior is unacceptable. You can't just threaten to stop helping the family because you're having some kind of quarter-life crisis. We need to discuss this rationally. There were 12 more messages, each following similar themes. Guilt, manipulation, attempts at reconciliation that didn't include any real acknowledgement of the fundamental problems in our family dynamic. The last message was from Marcus, which surprised me. Hi, Jessica. It's Marcus. I know this is awkward, but I wanted you to know that Emma and I have been talking, and we're going to postpone the wedding until we can pay for it ourselves. I'm going to look for a regular job, and Emma said she wants to do the same. I don't fully understand the family situation, but I can see that things haven't been fair to you. I hope we can talk sometime. That message gave me the first glimmer of hope I had felt all day. At least one person in this situation was capable of recognizing reality and taking responsibility. Over the next 3 days, I maintained my silence while my family's panic escalated. The calls and texts became more frequent and more desperate as they realized I was serious about cutting off financial support. By December 28th, reality was setting in. Mom left a voicemail that was less manipulative and more genuinely frightened. Jessica, the mortgage payment is due tomorrow, and we don't have enough money to cover it. Please, we need to talk. I know we haven't always appreciated everything you've done, but we can't just figure out how to pay all these bills overnight. That evening, Emma showed up at my apartment. When I opened the door, I barely recognized my little sister. She looked exhausted, her usually perfect hair unwashed and her eyes swollen from crying. Can I come in? She asked quietly. I stepped aside to let her enter my small living room, which suddenly felt cramped with both of us in it. Emma sat on my couch and immediately started crying again. Jessica, I spent the last 3 days going through Mom and Dad's finances with them. I had no idea how bad things were. I thought Dad was just being modest when he said money was tight. I sat across from her, waiting to hear what she had learned. The house would have been foreclosed on 3 years ago without your payments. Dad's salary barely covers food and basic expenses. They've been using credit cards to pay for everything else, including my art supplies and exhibition fees. Emma looked up at me with a mixture of shame and horror. Jessica, there's $35,000 in credit card debt, all of it from things they bought for me or told me I could buy. The expensive easel Marcus gave me for Christmas? Mom put it on her credit card because I mentioned wanting one. I felt a familiar stab of guilt but pushed it aside. This was exactly the kind of manipulation that had kept me trapped in this cycle for years. Emma, I'm sorry you're learning all this now, but it's not my responsibility to fix Mom and Dad's financial mismanagement. I know, she said quickly. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm here to tell you that I got a job. That surprised me. What kind of job? Administrative assistant at a marketing company downtown. It's not glamorous, but it pays $40,000 a year. I start Monday. And Marcus got a job at a home improvement store. He starts next week too. Emma wiped her eyes with the tissue I handed her. We're going to move in together and get our own apartment. I'm going to pay Mom and Dad $500 a month in rent for the next few months while they figure out their finances, and then we'll be completely independent. What about your art? I asked. I'll still paint, but I'll do it on evenings and weekends like a normal person. You were right, Jessica. I'm 25 years old, and I've been acting like a teenager. I've been living in a fantasy world where someone else pays for everything while I play artist. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely proud of my sister. Emma, I'm glad you're taking responsibility, but what about Mom and Dad? $500 a month won't cover their expenses. I know. They're going to have to downsize. They've already started looking at smaller apartments. Dad is going to try to find a second job, and Mom is going to increase her hours at the dental office. Emma stood up to leave, then turned back to me. Jessica, I want you to know that I understand now why you were so angry. I've been incredibly selfish and oblivious. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I hope someday we can have a real relationship, one where I'm not dependent on you for everything. After Emma left, I felt emotionally drained, but also oddly hopeful. For the first time, someone in my family had taken real responsibility and made concrete plans to change their situation. Over the following weeks, I watched from a distance as my family's lifestyle adjusted to reality. My parents found a 2-bedroom apartment in a less expensive neighborhood. Dad took a part-time evening job at a hardware store. Mom increased her hours to full-time. Emma and Marcus moved into a modest apartment and began their new jobs. Emma posted less frequently on social media, but when she did, the photos showed a different kind of life. Making dinner together in their small kitchen, taking walks instead of expensive weekend trips, working on art projects in their shared living room instead of a dedicated studio. The most surprising development came in February when Dad called me directly. Jessica, I owe you an apology, he said without preamble. I've been thinking a lot about Christmas morning and the things that were said. You were right about how we treated you. I was too shocked to respond immediately. Your mother and I got so caught up in supporting Emma's dreams that we forgot about your sacrifices. We let you carry our financial burden while taking credit for Emma's success. That was wrong. Dad, I said carefully, I appreciate the apology, but I need you to understand that this isn't just about money. It's about feeling valued and appreciated as your daughter. I know, he replied. And I want you to know that we see you now. We see how much you gave up for us, and we're ashamed that we took it for granted. It was the first real acknowledgement I had ever received from my father, and it meant more to me than any financial contribution ever could. How are you managing without my support? I asked. It's hard, he admitted. We had to make a lot of changes, and we're living much more simply than we're used to. But we're managing, and more importantly, we're taking responsibility for our own lives instead of depending on you. 3 months after our Christmas confrontation, Emma invited me to coffee. When I arrived at the small cafe near her new apartment, I was struck by how different she looked. She seemed more mature, more grounded, more like a real adult than I had ever seen her. I wanted to update you on how things are going, she said after we had ordered our drinks. How is the job? I asked. Actually, I love it more than I expected. I'm good at organizing and managing projects, and my boss said I have a real talent for creative problem solving. I'm thinking about taking some business classes at the community college. What about your art? Emma smiled. I'm still painting, but it feels different now. When I was doing it full-time with no financial pressure, it felt empty somehow. Now that I'm working for my materials and studio time, each painting feels more meaningful. She pulled out her phone and showed me pictures of her recent work. The paintings were different from her earlier pieces, more mature, more emotionally complex. I sold 2 paintings last month, she said with quiet pride. Small sales, but it's the first money I've ever made from my art, money I earned myself. We talked for 2 hours, and for the first time in our adult lives, I felt like I was having a conversation with an equal, rather than a dependent. Jessica, Emma said as we prepared to leave, I know I can never really make up for the 7 years you spent supporting me, but I want you to know that I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the sacrifice you made. 6 months after Christmas, my life has transformed in ways I never expected. With an extra $2,265 per month in my budget, I was able to put a down payment on a small house. I have a real emergency fund for the first time in years. I'm taking a photography class and planning a trip to Europe. Things I never thought I could afford. Most importantly, my relationships with my family members have evolved into something healthier and more genuine. Emma and I have coffee every few weeks, and our conversations are balanced and mutual. She asks about my work and my interests, not just when she needs something. When she got promoted at her job, she called to share the news with genuine excitement about her own achievements. My parents and I are still rebuilding our relationship, but there's a foundation of honesty now that didn't exist before. They've stopped taking credit for Emma's success, and they've started acknowledging my contributions to the family over the years. The most unexpected outcome has been watching Emma thrive in her independence. Her art has improved dramatically now that she's creating from a place of emotional authenticity rather than comfortable privilege. She's planning a small art show for next fall, funded entirely by her own savings and the proceeds from her recent sales. Marcus has become someone I genuinely respect and enjoy spending time with. He and Emma have built a partnership based on mutual support and shared responsibility, rather than the dependent dynamic that characterized Emma's relationship with our parents. They're planning to get married next spring, but it will be a simple ceremony at the local botanical gardens with about 30 guests. Emma is making her own dress, and they're having a potluck reception at the community center. It sounds infinitely more meaningful than the expensive spectacle they originally planned. I'm actually excited about this wedding, Emma told me recently. The first one felt like a performance for other people. This one feels like it's really about Marcus and me starting our life together. The journey hasn't been without setbacks. In March, Dad injured his back at his part-time job and was unable to work for 3 weeks. My parents called me in a panic, and I felt the familiar pull to step in and solve their crisis. Instead, I helped them research temporary disability benefits and connect with local assistance programs. Emma and Marcus contributed what they could from their savings, but the family handled the crisis together rather than expecting me to single-handedly fix it. It was scary not being able to call you for money, Mom admitted later, but it was also empowering to figure out solutions on our own. The most profound change has been in my own self-perception. For years, I had defined my worth by how much I could give to others, particularly my family. I measured my value as a daughter by my financial contributions rather than by who I was as a person. Learning to set boundaries felt selfish at first, but my therapist helped me understand the difference between being selfish and practicing healthy self-care. You can't love others well if you don't love yourself well, she explained during one of our sessions. Your family relationships were built on a foundation of financial dependence rather than mutual respect and affection. Real love doesn't require you to sacrifice your own financial security. I've started dating again, something I had put on hold while managing my family's financial crisis. David, a software architect I met through a hiking group, understands the importance of financial independence and mutual support in relationships. I admire how you handled your family situation, he said after I explained my story during one of our early dates. It takes real strength to change dysfunctional patterns, especially when you're the one who has to make the first move. The most surprising development came in May, when I received a card in the mail from my grandmother, Mom's mother. Inside was a check for $5,000 and a note that read, "Jessica, your mother told me about what happened at Christmas and how you had been supporting the family for years. I had no idea, and I'm ashamed that we let you carry that burden alone. This money is a small token of my appreciation for everything you sacrificed for our family. Please use it for something that brings you joy. You deserve to be happy and proud of the life you're building. Love, Grandma." I cried reading her note, not because of the money, but because it was the first time an older family member had truly seen and acknowledged what I had given up for the family's stability. I used part of the money to take a weekend trip to the coast with Rachel, my first real vacation in years. The rest went into my house fund, bringing me closer to my goal of having a fully funded emergency account. Looking back on that explosive Christmas morning, I realized it was the best gift I could have given myself and my family. By refusing to continue enabling their financial dependence, I forced everyone to grow up and take responsibility for their own lives. Emma has become the person I always knew she could be when she wasn't being sheltered from consequences. My parents have rediscovered their own resilience and problem-solving abilities. And I have learned that love doesn't require financial sacrifice. Real love flourishes when relationships are built on mutual respect and support. The hardest lesson was accepting that I couldn't control how my family responded to my boundaries. I could only control my own actions and choices. Some family members might have continued to blame me or expect me to resume my role as the family ATM. Fortunately, my family chose to grow and change rather than remain stuck in old patterns. but I was prepared for either outcome. I had finally learned that my worth as a person wasn't tied to how much money I gave away or how many people I could support. I was valuable simply because I existed, not because of what I could provide for others. Today, when I drive past the neighborhood where my parents used to live, the house I helped them keep for 7 years, I don't feel resentment or regret. I feel proud of the woman who was strong enough to say enough when saying yes had become automatic. I feel grateful for the family relationships that survived and thrived after being built on a foundation of honesty rather than financial dependence. And I feel excited about the future I'm building on my own terms, funded by my own choices rather than by obligation to others. The most powerful moment came last month when Emma called me with exciting news. "Jessica, I have to tell you something. I just got accepted into a business development program at work. It's a 2-year track that could lead to a management position. And the best part? I'm paying for the classes myself with money I've saved from my job." The pride in her voice was unmistakable, and it was entirely her own. She had earned this opportunity through her own hard work, and she was funding her own professional development. It was the kind of achievement that meant something because it came from her own effort and sacrifice. "That's amazing, Emma. I'm so proud of you," I said, and I meant it completely. "I couldn't have done this without learning what independence really means," she replied. Christmas morning was the worst and best day of my life. Worst because I realized how much I had been taking advantage of your generosity, but best because it forced me to finally grow up. As we talked about her plans for the future, her goals for advancement at work, her hopes for her art career, her excitement about building a life with Marcus based on their own efforts, I realized that my decision to cut off financial support had given Emma something much more valuable than money. It had given her the opportunity to discover her own strength, her own capabilities, and her own worth. Things that no amount of financial support could ever provide. 6 months ago, I thought cutting off my family would mean losing them forever. Instead, I gained relationships built on respect rather than dependency, appreciation rather than expectation, and love rather than obligation. The woman who walked out of that Christmas breakfast was tired, resentful, and financially stretched thin despite her good income. The woman writing this story today owns her own home, has healthy savings, maintains boundaries with grace, and enjoys genuine relationships with family members who see her as a person rather than a source of funding. If you're reading this and recognizing patterns from your own family relationships, I want you to know that change is possible. It's terrifying and difficult, and it might temporarily make things worse before they get better. But you deserve to be valued for who you are, not what you can provide for others. Setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop enabling them and start requiring them to take responsibility for their own lives. The family I have now is smaller than the one I was supporting financially, but it's infinitely stronger. We're bound together by choice and affection rather than money and obligation. And that makes all the difference. Have you ever had to make the difficult choice to cut off financial support to family members who were taking advantage of your generosity? How did you find the strength to set those boundaries? Share your experiences in the comments below. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these struggles is the first step toward making necessary changes. If this story resonated with you, please upvote and consider sharing it with others who might be struggling with similar family dynamics. Remember, you can't control how others respond to your boundaries, but you can control whether you maintain them. Your financial security and emotional well-being matter just as much as anyone else's in your family. Thank you for reading my story. And remember, sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is stop being the solution to everyone else's problems and start being the author of your own life.